Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February of 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia. I've been on a ketogenic diet since April of 2014. And when I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've lost about 100 pounds. I've completely turned my health around.
And this show is a document of our experiences thriving for years in ketosis.
Oh, yeah, thriving.
Yeah. And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
We're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
Nah.
We have done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind that. We hope to share some of that research. Where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
And you'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies. We love to cook and we love to eat. In every episode, we both share a keto recipe for your non-ignoring pleasure.
I tried to ignore it once, and then it painted itself purple, jumped up on the piano and started singing, "I'm a recipe!" And I just couldn't ignore it.
All right, so let's start podcast number 106, Healing Obesity with Dr. Eric Westman.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
Now, he's a doctor.
Now he is, yes. Do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
Last week's show, was that what we got wrong?
No, it's fat to satiety. Sorry.
Oh, fat to satiety.
Yeah. So, Richard, do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
Yeah, I've actually got one quick correction or errata from the What We Got Wrong episode, which was the one we did 2 episodes back. And that was, I mentioned that Siobhan Huggins discovered that insulin increases scavenger receptor expression as well as inhibiting ABCA1, for example, cholesterol efflux. And she wanted me to make 3 points. And the first is she wanted to clarify by discovering that I meant that she and I were discussing something, and as a consequence, she found some studies on the topic. She didn't do the research herself, and she just wanted to take credit from the wonderful researchers who did that work.
Right.
The other thing she wanted to say was that there were 2 in vitro studies, and thus we can't really say for sure that this is true in the human body or that it works the same way. It does, however, give us a hint and something to investigate further.
Very good.
And the third thing is she said, I wouldn't necessarily say this in isolation is what causes atherosclerosis, rather that if it works in the same way in vivo, it could be a devastating exacerbating factor. After all, if insulin is high, but there's no damage to the endothelium, then there would be no trash to collect, in theory. So she just wanted to be a little bit cautious. She didn't want to take credit for stuff she didn't do.
Very good.
So that's why we love Siobhan.
That's why we love her. Yep.
And that's my correction.
All right. Well, let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is.
Sure.
A ketogenic diet is any diet that puts you in a state of ketosis where you're burning fat for fuel rather than glucose. And to do that, a surefire way is to limit carbohydrates to 20 grams or less per day.
Sure.
And it's really important where you get those carbohydrates from. You don't want them from bread or starch or sugar. You get them from green leafy vegetables, maybe some eggs, maybe some cheese, that kind of stuff, cream.
Yeah.
Protein is moderate. That means 1 to 1.5 grams of protein for every kilogram of lean body mass that you have. And all of your energy should come from fat. Oh, yes. Fatty. So, Richard, how was your week? How's university going?
It's good. I'm actually up to my 2nd week. Biology that we're doing is pretty basic, so that's pretty boring. But the chemistry that we're doing is all new for me, because when I went to school, the quantum model was considered to be a little bit too complex for high school. And so we used the Bohr model of periodic table and the position of electrons.
Right.
Well, now we're doing quantum mechanics, which is a lot more interesting and it's a lot more fun. So that's kind of what I'm getting into. We didn't buy a house. We thought we were going to buy a house. It didn't happen. But we are looking at a new property. Maybe after Breckenridge, when we come back, we'll buy a house. But right now we're just getting ready for Breck. So I'm flying out on Wednesday, and I'm going to be 4 days fasted when I fly.
Wow.
So when I see you guys in Denver, I'll be sort of 5 days into a fast, and then I'm going to break it at the Breck Keto Dude House.
It's going to be fun. I can't wait.
Yeah, so how was your week, Carl?
My week was good. As you heard in last week's show, I've been doing this very cool experiment in losing weight. Yeah, I had a little bit of I'm not going to say a setback, but I got waylaid by that Mr. Jack Chaplin made some delicious porchetta, and I went down there and I smelled it and the fennel and everything,
Daddy
and
Jack's.
I was like, I got to have me some of that. So, but in theory, this is the pattern that I'm going to be using to lose the rest of my weight. It's a wonderful pattern.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Oh, that's wonderful. So, and you're still losing weight. So,
I've just put a wedge into it for a couple of days, and I'll be back to it.
But isn't porchetta still pork belly?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's not what you're eating, it's when and how much. You're
gotcha.
right.
Of course.
Like I found that if I just eat one meal and I'm done, around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, everything works.
Yeah.
But if I have another one in the evening, that drives the wedge in and stops everything.
Yeah. So it's all about meal timing, and it's about
for me,
making sure your insulin is low for as much as you can during the day.
Yep.
If you were to have a mouthful of pork belly every hour on the hour for 24 hours, you wouldn't lose any weight.
They're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody would say it's all the fat you're eating.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, if you were to eat exactly the same amount of calories all in one fell swoop at 3 in the afternoon, you lose weight.
It's simple as that. For me. Yeah. I'm not saying for everybody,
that's
but
right.
for me, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. We really should. We're not recommending anybody else go out and eat Carl's diet. I mean,
it's essentially the coming together of a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. That's it. It is that.
And bourbon.
And bourbon.
Yeah, and the drinking man's diet.
Yeah, don't have to have bourbon to do this, of course. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Good.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm glad it's working for you, yeah.
Well, let's give away a mug, shall we?
Sure, absolutely.
So every show at this time, we like to give away a prize to one lucky member of the Two Keto Dudes fan club. And you can join that fan club just by going to fanclub.2keto.com, answer a few questions, and you're on the list. And randomly might get picked for mug winning or other things.
So who are we randomly picking on today?
Today we are randomly picking Alan Vernon.
Well done, Alan. Congratulations.
He's getting a coffee mug that says "Keep Calm and Keto On" with the dudes' faces on it. And
sweet.
Into which you can drink your bulletproof coffee, heavy coffee, cream, I don't know, whatever, bourbon, I don't care. We don't care what you put in it, Alan. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, and if you don't want to wait to win a mug, you can always buy one at gear.2keto.com and pick yourself up a T-shirt while you're at it, or assless chaps, or
you can't say
do we
that.
Make assless chaps. I think I just said it twice.
Get some Prince pants.
Adult diapers. I mean, don't we put our faces on everything?
Whatever junk you can find, just buy some. I don't know. We don't make much money off of that stuff.
No, we
just
don't.
Fun.
We just do it because our fans love it.
Yeah. And that brings us to
Mail.
Oh my God, I pegged it. I got to do that again. And that brings us to
Mail. What you got, Carl?
This is really funny because I just woke up and you're just going to bed, so we're both a little punchy.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, this is a great message on the forum from Jeanette. Liver cirrhosis reversed.
Wow.
Huge non-scale victory. I've been on keto for a year, and my cirrhosis went from stage 4 to stage 2-3.
Wow.
All from keto. My liver doctor strongly suggested that I start this way of life. The best thing I ever did. I had a biopsy before I started and another one a week ago. I'm so happy. This is my life. Keto rocks.
That is outstanding.
Isn't that amazing?
When you consider how much we rely on our livers when we're in ketosis, because our liver makes glucose that keeps our brain from slipping into a coma.
Yeah.
It makes ketones, which, supplement that glucose so that we don't have to make a lot of the stuff. And it really is the metabolic factory that's keeping us going. So it's remarkable that with all of that extra work that it's got to do, you can heal so much. That's wonderful. That
is
really
wonderful.
is great news. Yeah.
Yeah. 50 ways to love your liver. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you.
You really inspired us.
So I've got one today from a newbie on the forum called Freak. And he says, I have found the Two Keto Dudes podcast. I'm a 35-year-old local truck driver. When I was over the road a few years ago, I was 310 pounds. And I did calorie counting, and I lost 50 pounds in a year. But I was starving all the time. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
He says, I felt my weight creeping up again. So I've tried calories in, calories out again, and I can only make it a few days without blowing the diet. I've been doing keto since Monday and hardcore binging the dudes to keep me going and motivating me.
Yeah.
I've added lots of butter and salt to my diet, and last night I had food left over and I wasn't close to physically stuffed, but I had to wrap up my plate since I couldn't take another bite.
Yeah.
The scale has gone from 267 to 258 in a week and a half also. This lifestyle is insane. You didn't think it would work, but I believed in the dude's science and wanted to thank them. If anyone can point them to the post, well, I just found the post. Thanks, Freak, and I'm reading it out on the show.
Yeah.
So if you're behind your rig right now and listening to the podcast, welcome to the forum.
Yeah, that's right. That's what happens here at the forum. Just to reiterate what you said before about Siobhan, this isn't our science. We're just bringing it to you and saying, look at this.
Yeah, it's people like Eric Westman who brought the science to us, and and by coincidence, we have him coming up as a guest.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
And here he is, Dr. Eric Westman. Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes.
We did a show yesterday about satiety, and one of my arguments for it was that satiety is working when somebody who has weight to lose, while that weight is not contributing to their energy balance. And part of that has to do with the insulin preventing them from releasing. I mean, if somebody has, like myself, I've lost 100 pounds. So my body fat has become insulin sensitive now. But my insulin levels are still raised high by other tissue that are holding it high. Then my body fat cannot contribute to the satiety calculus, all of the thousands of inputs that come in to determine where satiety should be. And so my thought experiment was really that if somebody has no body fat, then clearly they need to eat a plate full of fat if they're getting energy from fat. This is something Dr. Finney told us. And if somebody has something stopping them from accessing their body fat, even if they have a lot of body fat, if something is putting a brick wall in front of it, they may as well have zero body fat. And so that was my argument, was that, and I didn't want to set you up in this by going down that route without letting you know that, last week we just discussed that. And
I did an experiment last week where, I've been on a plateau for a year or more. And I've figured out that if I eat one meal that is exceptionally fatty, ketogenic, right? At least, 70% fat, 30% protein, but just do that once a day. And I stop before, say, 5:00 p.m. and I don't eat anything else for the rest of the day. Not only am I stuffed to the point almost of nausea, and I eat until I'm just at that nauseated level, just before that happens. That's when I stop. And I'm completely full for the rest of the day, for the rest of the morning, the next morning, and that's working. Weight's coming off. So it's a satiety signal. It's not a how much fat are you eating. So we sort of tend to think about, once the carbohydrates are out of the way and you don't have the sort of brain drug reaction to carbohydrates that you think is hunger, but it actually isn't. It's you actually can trust your body's hunger and satiety signals to tell you when you've had enough.
Interesting. A couple things come to mind there. Do you get the feeling sometimes that eating makes you want to eat more?
No.
Richard?
I sometimes do. And I also get the feeling if I go out and exercise, if I go ride my bike, if I'm hungry and go ride my bike, I'm no longer hungry. Both of those could be to do with insulin.
Let's consider the case now of someone's lost 100 pounds, but they need another, they want to lose another 50 pounds or 100 pounds.
Right.
I have a lot of people in that situation. The thing that we're not really talking about, and you can measure it in a clinical setting, is your metabolic rate. So remember the piece, the New York Times article from a couple summers ago about people who are on The Biggest Loser?
Oh, yeah.
And they exercise, and their metabolic rates went way down. Well, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just our adaptation. Right. So the more you try, like Chinese finger torture, the more you try to pull, the more it pulls against you. The more you exercise, the more your hunger is going to go up, and the more your metabolic rate will go down. In fact, Finney points out in a couple of his studies someone else did, but he points them out in his lectures, that some people gain weight even though they had less calories and they exercised more. And the only possible way that can happen is that the metabolism speed went way down. The amount that you just burn, at night or just sitting.
Or they're adding muscle by exercising, and muscle is denser than fat.
Oh, okay. I think they accounted for that in that particular study.
The sad thing about the Biggest Loser study, and Kevin Hall says this himself, he says, I can't really explain this because he was building this model that was designed to predict their weight change. It didn't predict their weight change or their metabolic rates. In theory, their metabolic rate shouldn't have dropped as much as it actually did. And then when they put all the weight back on, in theory, the metabolic rate should have gone back up again. What he's missing is the fact that their respiratory quotient stayed low and their energy expenditure, he was measuring their energy expenditure in kilocalories per day, per kilogram of body weight. Their energy expenditure went up dramatically between when the show finished and then the 6 year later when he came to have a look at them again. They were still working really hard. They were still running on the treadmill for 2 hours a day. And the poor buggers, their body weight had all gone back up and their metabolic rate remained under 1900. They went from 2600 at the beginning of the competition when they were overweight and about to start exercising down to about 2000 through the process of the competition. But then when he came back 6 years later, their metabolic rate was 1900. Their HOMA-IR scores, their insulin resistance at the 6 year point was twice as bad as it was before they walked into the competition. So that caloric restriction broke those people and damaged them permanently. So I think it's a very sad story.
Of course, that also probably assumed that they were eating carbohydrates.
Well, their respiratory quotient showed that they didn't all of a sudden go and binge on ice cream when they left the competition. So their respiratory quotient showed that they were still mostly burning. They went from 0.75 to 0.77. So, they didn't go up to 1, which they would have if they'd all of a sudden started binging.
Well, right, but 0.7 would be totally keto or taking away carbs. So, but if you're really sensitive to the carbohydrates and you get an insulin response or whatever else hormone, I hope we figure out all these other hormones. But, leptin was kind of a big letdown because it turns out that if you have a lot of insulin around, you're probably leptin resistant.
Yes.
Right. So getting more leptin is not the answer. And, it seems to me that we're, as an obesity medicine doctor, and I've been president of the Obesity Medicine Association, there are lots of ways to help someone lose weight. Again, that Fort Knox idea but basically you're trying to get fat store that's there to save your life. And, we're trying to come up with socially acceptable ways palatable ways, the socially tolerable and helpful and even interesting ways for you to just eat less.
Right.
Yes. I take your point about insulin being the whipping boy, because it is the 800-pound gorilla. Mm. And when you remove that from the picture, there's a lot of other monkeys that could be responsible that you need to start focusing on. So,
the idea that insulin is not new, so you can't really get money to fund studies about insulin. That's why there are all these other things going on. Although you could creatively figure out how to do it, I suppose. But the more I show these slides of the brain interactions that are now being studied, of all the redundant pathways for feeling full and feeling hunger and all that, it's going to be something that's hard to undo, because if you don't eat, you die.
Yes.
So
eventually.
Yeah.
So drugs can target these different satiety pathways and hunger and fullness, but why not just do it by targeting where the money is, target the fat cells. And interesting, though, that, Carl, your experience about eating once a day and feeling full or feeling that, and in your experience, how has exercise affected? Actually, Richard, you mentioned that you can exercise through hunger, and then the hunger goes away. But I'm wondering what that hunger really meant.
Yeah.
Is it a blood sugar issue? Is it stress felt as hunger?
I've lost all my weight, 80 pounds of it, with no deliberate exercise whatsoever. Last summer, I took a couple of bike rides, but I don't do any deliberate exercise. The thing is that what's interesting to me about these viewpoints is that it's clear that you want to eat enough fat to raise your metabolic rate, but not so much that it interferes with, the amount of calories that you're burning. There's like a window there, and especially if you're eating one meal a day, that sort of keeps your insulin level lower most of the day, which is good. But now the question is how much fat. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to eat until I'm feeling like there's no way I could have another bite. And then turns out that worked really well for me. Now I've only done it a week, so we'll see what happens after next week. But
it could be just a honeymoon.
It could be a honeymoon period,
his
right?
His body just be adapting to new things have happened.
And if I could scale that down and eat less of it before that sort of pre-nausea kicks in, and not be hungry for the rest of the day, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Well, I have a lot of people who just naturally will eat once a day or twice a day, and then I have a lot of people who can't unlearn the idea that I need 3 meals a day and 2 snacks, and it's like they're filling up the gas tank on their car 5 times a day, and it's full. So there are other things that drive the sensation of hunger. And Jimmy Moore in the book Keto Clarity goes through other things that can be misinterpreted as hunger. I mean, all of these things, if your fat gas tank is full, whatever you perceive as hunger is not that you're going to be dying in the next few days or months.
Right.
I mean, so all of these other things, the emotional eating component that we've been stress eating, things
can raise ghrelin,
conditioned.
Right.
I'm still figuring out how to use that knowledge clinically.
Okay.
The other, I guess, the more practical idea of adding ketones is interesting. Now that there are ketone supplements and drinks, while I haven't seen studies on that yet, I'm very curious about if that could help, although there are calories in those ketones.
Yeah, I've tried to stay away from ketones very hard because there's a big question mark over some of these. Some of the exogenous ketones are racemic, and there are issues there with stereoisomers of beta hydroxybutyrate that we're just not, and we've got maybe 30 years worth of experience dealing with, and we've got potentially a billion years of experience dealing with the other form. And so I worry about that myself. But there's apparently there's a new kind of ketone that I want to find more information about, which is, there's actually two kinds that are interesting. There's one from an English company associated with Professor Kieran Clark and Professor Richard Veitch, and that is a non-racemic beta-hydroxybutyrate exogenous ketone. And then there's one that was used in Australia in one of these studies done in Canberra by an exercise expert who has been very anti Tim Noakes for many years, and this is Louise Burke, and she did the Walker study where, I don't know if you know the science, but so she used a ketone in one of these studies and it caused gastric distress, and that could be the reason why the performance of these cyclists dropped, and that's what a lot of people say. But the interesting thing about this ketone is it's two acetoacetate molecules esterified together, and so that's non-racemic. It's not a chiral molecule, so there's potential there. It's interesting now that we can eat ketones, but some of the early stuff on the market was, it scared me.
At that level of is it a drug, is it a food, is it how, in the old life I had in nicotine and smoking cessation research, there was all this, is tobacco a drug? It's interesting if ketones... Well, I mean, food is a drug, right? I mean, even sugar is a drug, but grandfathered in. But I wonder if, like your concerns about, it's almost on the safety side. So they might work, but then you're going to want to see 1,000 people on it for a certain period of time to get the idea of the safety window.
Yeah. I trust real food to be safer than something that's created in a lab.
Well, that's not very futuristic, Carl.
No, and also grains are real food, aren't they? I'm not going to touch that.
Those haven't been around all that long.
I guess let me phrase that differently. I trust my body, right? I trust my body more than I trust scientists in a lab to come up with ways to fool my body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember the Olestra thing, the fat?
Yes.
It felt like
the road to hell is paved with Olestras.
Well,
yes.
I like your general sense of caution, but don't you think we can actually come up with a better diet than historically,
Well, we have one, don't we?
What's that?
We have one, the low-carb, high-fat diet.
Well, but that was historically driven.
Sure.
So, but I mean, if there was a formula that optimized, I don't know. It seems like we still don't know everything about nutrition. There are new vitamins being discovered, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready to just, like you, jump on whatever a scientist is saying yet.
So I know NASA are working on a kind of food that they can produce in space on the trip to Mars, because they don't have enough payload to carry all the food that astronauts were going to need for the journey. So they want to make a bacterial plant that can manufacture food on the way. And one of the things, interestingly enough, that they're looking at is having the astronauts being ketogenic, because that drives their redox state so that they're less susceptible to radiation. Their redox state is tipped towards repairing DNA and a lot of things that are really good if you're in a high radiation space. And so
you need less oxygen. Yeah. And you're, as Finney taught me years ago, is you actually need less payload if you have 9 calories per gram of fat.
Absolutely.
You need half the amount, or you get twice the calories almost. Oh, well, a little more than twice per gram. So I remember I called NASA, 10 years ago, out of a naive attempt to see what was going on. And it just seemed like they were worried about having the astronauts urinating out their calcium and losing bones and getting stones. And so that's a great idea, though, if you want to optimize human performance with less oxygen, less payload. And
they should also get on the rocket with some belly fat, so they got a little backup.
Well,
get it.
Yeah.
But why not think about that on Earth even? Yeah. We could feed more people, perhaps with less money or less weight transportation, if we got out of this idea that you had to have carbs.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm intrigued with have you seen this TED Talk by the guy who suggests we could feed the world on insect protein?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I have. Yeah.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
So, I mean, even with the idea of beans and rice as a staple is something relatively new. Yep. And it was to get a complete protein that was inexpensive for parts of the world that didn't have much money. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, when you think of it, insects are very close to their arthropods, just like crustacea. And shellfish is delicious. So, I'm sure there are insects that are delicious. We just need to find them.
It's the UGG factor.
I don't care about the UGG factor.
There's a book called Man Eating Bugs. And there's a picture of a little boy eating a tarantula on the cover of it. Check it out.
Oh, well.
I met the authors at a meeting. They're really wonderful people, and they have a book on the material world and what people eat around the world. And anyway, they have one called Man Eating Bugs.
Can we talk about the typical experience in the 90s when Robert Atkins came on the scene? And I can talk about mine and start the conversation there, but for me, I was only focused on weight loss. I was in my 20s. I had 50 pounds to lose. And I just wanted a diet where I could get trim. And what I took away from him was don't eat carbs, eat more fat. There was nothing really about salt in there. And now we know the science has come out and shown us that, when we lower insulin, the kidneys flush more salt. And so you need to take more. Otherwise, you're going to feel horrible. And I know a lot of people that gave up because they didn't anticipate that sort of keto flu, those symptoms, because we didn't know anything about that. And I don't think he even said anything about that adaptation period being you might feel ill. But I remember basically people attributing it to the amount of fat they're eating. When I eat fat, I feel terrible. And so a lot of my friends that did it sort of dialed down the fat and ate more protein. And, that got them some of the way there. But then I don't know what you think, but I think there was a lot of, still a lot more than today, a lot of social pressure that you're going to kill yourself, it's dangerous and all that stuff. And those little voices in the back of your head actually do influence us, even though we may not want them to. And for me, that's why I eventually went off it, because first of all, there's no infrastructure. Like there was no coconut oil in the stores. It was hard to get fattier cuts of meat. People look at you like you're going to kill yourself. Like it was that social pressure that made me go off. It wasn't the diet itself. I felt great when I was on it.
Yeah, socially, now you can get riced cauliflower and even cauli tots. You don't even call them tater tots because they're not taters, right? But the change in how people are teaching the diet is interesting. And Dr. Atkins, when you think about it, I visited his clinic a couple times. It was really a consultation practice. A lot of people were in New York City, but a lot of people came from, all over the place and had read the book, and it was like visiting the guru on the mountain,
right?
And that doesn't, you don't have to make it work for everyone forever if you're the guru on the mountain. Sure. In fact, today on the internet, you don't have to have it work for anyone other than yourself if you really are doing it. And so the art of it and the implementation of it in lots of different people, the metabolism, lots of different social settings, lots of different cultural approaches to food. In North Carolina, I have to teach people how to have avocados. And, if someone comes from California, I have to have them teach them how to have a pork rind. So there are all these different beliefs about food, and spam is my mom raised me on spam, and she didn't want to kill me, but now it's not worthy of. So Dr. Atkins didn't have to deal with all of those things, although the clinic did.
Yeah.
So when I visited, he had a staff of doctors, and there were other doctors and nurses, including Jackie Eberstein, who's still working with me today, and she's the lead clinical program director for the HEAL Clinic. Yeah. And we're trying to get this for lots and lots of people. And so she was able to figure out for a lot of people how to help people stay on it for a long time. The whole salt focus it's a Finney effect. Steve Finney bringing it in. And although, I can't say that I've ever seen a study, and, I'm squirming. So this is a study that needs to be done. Looking at people who are counseled to have salt and counseled not to have salt. It may or may not be such a big deal. However, just the awareness of it can help when there's side effects.
Certainly the observation of the thousands of people in our forums and the thousands of patients that Jason Fung and Megan Ramos deal with, and the way that they say this is almost like a panacea to cure things from hunger to flu-like symptoms,
hard bowel movements,
problems. Okay, hard bowel movements.
Fixes that too.
Yeah.
Muscle cramps. Yeah. So it's my remedies that people laugh when they come through, like resident doctors. I push bouillon cubes and milk of magnesia once at bedtime, a teaspoon every night for a week to fix muscle cramps and constipation. And although the keto flu thing is kind of unusual, the other interesting thing is it'd be nice to have a series of people to kind of really get at the percent of people who are affected by these things.
Yes.
So most people who come to me, I ask them, did you have any side effects? They say no.
Right.
I mean, some people do have that. And just to put a handle on the percent, because some people don't do it for fear of getting it. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
It's true. I know people that also have never had the side effects. It may be that they are eating enough salt. It may not be. I don't know. I think a randomized controlled trial needs to be done, and you should probably do that, Dr. Westman.
Thank you. I'll do it.
There could be another explanation for that, though, because a lot of people who go on their quote-unquote Atkins diet or low-carb or ketogenic diets may be hypertensive. So they may be restricting in advance anyway.
Yeah.
So they may have gone through 10, 20 years of restricting salt, and then you put them on a diet, and then they still restrict salt because they haven't been told, and maybe they get more problems. And maybe Dr. Finney's insistence on hyponatremia being an issue is a corrective for hypertensives who are holding back on salt.
Yeah, and from my vantage point of monitoring people, that's just a discussion we have over time, and we're monitoring the pressure. Nowadays, you can measure your blood pressure at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I eat more salt than I ever have in my life, and my blood pressure is completely normal. And my doctor was stupefied by that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're teaching your doctor. But think about when you have carbs, you're actually holding on to salt as well. I'm sure you've noticed that if you have some carbs the next day, you're puffy or you have extra, and that's the carb, insulin, salt retention. So people can feel better after having carbs, and it may be because they're holding on to salt better, not because they're fixing their blood sugar and they were going to die because their brain didn't have glucose.
That's true.
And, the sugar is an interesting thing. I heard a sugar cravings and addiction, heard a psychologist in Chicago give a talk at our national meeting, and he actually came out of a low-carb clinic. It was a fascinating talk, and he basically said if someone's bored, they don't know what to eat, it's basically the sugar talking. It's they want to go back to sugar, and so the people who just I can't figure out what to have. Well, look on the list. No, there's nothing.
Yeah, we don't have any food in the house. I want some Cheerios.
Yeah, because Cheerios turn to sugar. Same thing. Yeah. Well, I don't know. You're teaching me more than I'm teaching you.
Hardly.
No, you're not by a long shot.
We've just had experience, I suppose, like your patients have, I'm sure.
Well, most of what I do is just reorient people back to the basics, you know?
Yeah.
They go out, they listen to this, listen to that, listen to their friends. There was someone else listening. A patient came in. He said, "Well, Dr. So-and-so says I just need 2 weeks of keto." And then I looked at him and said, "Look,
I get that too.
I wrote the book on this. Okay,
I am qualified to have an opinion."
Or I'll say, go find him and go see him. Well, I don't know. Well,
yeah,
the internet is it's a blessing and a curse.
It is.
I have a friend who did it for a while and then said, my doctor said that you do keto for a few weeks, you lose some weight, and then you have to go back to a balanced diet. And I said, he's wrong. And then he pulled the credential thing, like, oh, this is a doctor who comes from Harvard Medical School and this and that, and he knows what he's doing. Like, in other words, how does my buddy here know more than my doctor? It's a really hard thing to convince people. And it's not me. Well, I didn't make it up. I just know the research.
Because doctors generally don't get any training. Yeah. That's the easy answer is...
Let's talk about Keto Fest.
Yeah. So will there be a Keto Fest in 2018?
Gee, I hope so. We're planning to do a Kickstarter very soon. And the tentative date, of course, if it happens, it will be on the weekend of July 21st.
Contingent on us being Kickstarted, of course.
Great.
And I want to know from you, because you were there at the first one, tell me about your experience.
I have to say there were several low-carb conferences, keto conferences last year, and my favorite one was Keto Fest.
That's awesome.
Thank you. It's very nice of you to say that.
The combination of a social Saturday and a science Sunday was not done anywhere else. And I think that's a model for helping people who want to come and pick the brains of the experts. I sat down under a tent with eating great barbecue and was learning from an engineer who had measured his own ketone levels for the last 10 years. Yeah. So, so it's a two-way street. Yeah. We both learn, and so the social Saturday, and then having the lectures on in a format being a part of it, but not the only part of it, was really exceptional.
And the bacon bar was pretty awesome too, wasn't it?
The bacon. Yes. Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me, and this is what a lot of people have come up to me later and said, was going to a restaurant where the wait staff all knew exactly what this keto thing was all about, and they knew what to offer you and to suggest. And in fact, the restaurant owners in a lot of these cases were all ketogenic, and they'd just been ketogenic for the past month or so. So they had the zeal of the recently converted, and everybody else in the room, in the restaurant, was all keto. And it was like, people came out of this experience crying because they're used to being the one weirdo in town who eats straight butter, or who refuses to eat bread rolls, and all of a sudden they're in a room with like-minded idiots, I guess, like-minded people, equally misguided fools who just are enjoying just the relaxation of just being.
And think, wow, this is what every town can be like. This is what every restaurant can be like in the future. Yeah. Hopefully, at some point.
Yes. Yeah, it was unique to have the downtown area with all the restaurants knowing what low carb or keto was. And I remember going to a wings place, and there was no worry about the sugar on the wings or the coating, and then there were also fun things to do. You could do a Segway tour or yoga, so Keto Fest was really unique, and I think was the best fair last year. I'm really excited that you're going to be doing it again.
Well, we are too, and we can't wait to have you and Jackie back.
I'd love to be there.
Is there anything else that you particularly want to talk about? Maybe something with Heal?
Well, we're excited with the Heal clinics to be opening our first clinics in Virginia.
Wow.
And so more listeners in Northern Virginia, Chesapeake, that area, we have availability to help people get off medications. Of course, Heal clinics will teach anyone at a distance as long as there's no medical condition that requires a visit to the clinic.
Yeah. Would you work with their doctors? I mean, do you work with and consult with their own general practitioners?
No, there just isn't an awareness yet of what other doctors just don't know how to handle the medications safely.
Wow.
So, and at this time, I know if someone's on a medicine and they need assistance, then we won't teach someone at a distance. I wish I could say that other doctors are how should I say, trained or competent, but I don't think it's safe enough yet.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good conservative viewpoint to have this early in the game. I think it's a great model, what you guys are doing at Heal and what Jason's doing at IDM and other consulting practices around the world, because people look to the doctors to be the voice of authority and be the voice of guidance and, answer the why is this happening questions and all of that.
As I see the world changing in terms of getting knowledge and understanding about keto, I see the Heal clinics as kind of just a piece of the puzzle. There are a lot of people who will be able to do this on their own. They don't need the extra assistance. If someone gets stuck or if they're on medication and need that safety monitoring, that's the time to think of the Heal clinic.
Very good.
Yeah.
Dr. Westman, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
All right. Keep calm and keto on.
Yeah. I look forward to a jam session.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's going to happen.
I've never heard Land Down Under sung with better
so
zeal.
badly.
No, it was fantastic.
We got to put keto lyrics to it next year.
Well, I need to try and learn lyrics. I need to learn lyrics because I have this weird thing with my brain where the music overwhelms the lyrics, and so I don't hear lyrics, so I never learn them. So that was I knew the chorus, and that was it.
I'm the same way. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's why we have those little phones going.
We'll have a better keyboard for you this year, too.
Yeah.
One with weighted action. All right. Thanks again.
I'm so glad you're still in this area in the game.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. Happy and honored.
Yes.
Thanks again.
Take care.
Yeah. No worries. Thanks, Eric.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
Always great to talk to Dr. Westman.
Absolutely. And we'll see him at Keto Fest.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a bit peckish.
I'm a little bit hungry too.
I guess we should offer some recipes. Brought that one in for a landing.
Yeah. What do you got, Carl?
Assless chaps. Come on. Well, as you know, I'm on this porky pork kick and all things pork, and pork is like wonder food for me. So this is just another way to do it. And in a Dutch oven, a cast iron Dutch oven to be exact.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, the hip Dutch ovens to have now are the La Creuset.
Yep. I got one of those.
Yeah, they're
Green
like,
one,
you have to fill out a credit application to buy one, though.
They're enamel. They're really nice. But
yeah, they are.
You can do it with an old cast iron.
Cast iron works really, really well. And Lodge cast iron is affordable. So basically, you start with a 3 to 4 pound pork roast. And listen, I'm not going to use any measurements because I love the idea that you can just feel your way to how much is enough, right?
Right.
The only measurement I'm going to give you is that we're using an entire lemon here. So the zest on the outside and the juice.
Nice.
All right. So you're going to essentially make a rub, but it's a wet rub. You're going to have some olive oil. You're going to have some garlic, crushed garlic. You're going to have fennel seed. You're going to have chopped rosemary. Of course, the lemon zest and lemon juice. And you're going to have salt and pepper. That's pretty much it. If I had to guess about how much garlic, I think I used almost an entire bulb of garlic.
Wow.
I love garlic.
I guess in a 3-4 pound pork roast, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to go all over and it's going to go in the sauce.
Yeah.
I used maybe 2 tablespoons of fennel seed, maybe that again of chopped rosemary, and I took the rosemary leaves off the stem and chopped it up fine.
Yeah, you don't want the woody bits.
Yeah, you don't want the woody bits. And salt, maybe again about the same, a tablespoon of salt perhaps. It's quite a bit of salt. And what I do is I get a big bowl, like a big salad bowl or just a giant bowl, and I pour it all in there and I just, roll it around and get it on every surface. Sometimes in a pork roast, there's a place where you can stuff inside, right? There's a cavity. And if there isn't one, you can make one. Just slit it, stuff it in there. You just want it on every surface. And now take the Dutch oven and put it over high heat on the range, on the stovetop. You want to sear each side and get the Dutch oven up to temperature.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, while you're doing this, your oven should be preheated to 250 Fahrenheit.
Mm.
So the reason that I do the sear is I want to warm up the roast before and the pan before I put it in the oven. And so I just want to, start the cooking process right on the stove, but only for like a couple minutes per side. That's it.
Yeah.
So now it's hot. Now all the stuff is in there. Now you cover it and put it in the oven and come back in 2.5 hours. And that stuff is magic.
Nice. That sear is probably going to hold in some of the juices by searing the outside of the roast.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happens. But one thing I do know that happens is because you have the lid on, no moisture escapes. And that's really critical with pork. I mean, that's what makes it tender.
Yeah.
So now when that pork comes out, you take it out and all of the pan drippings you want to make a sauce from. And it's very simple. Add cream, bring it to a boil, then turn it down and continue to whisk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not rocket surgery.
And heavy cream, I'm maybe talking, you don't really need all that much. I mean, but that sort of blends all the fats and the non-fats together.
Yeah.
And the other thing you can do if you really want it thick is add some xanthan gum. And what I do is if I'm going to do xanthan gum, I cool it down first. I've said this a number of times. I cool it down and then sprinkle some xanthan gum. You don't just want to pour it. You want to sprinkle it while whisking.
Right.
So it incorporates into there.
And it won't clump, yeah.
And it won't clump. And then you got to bring it back to a boil, which you have to do anyway if you have cream. And then once it boils, then you bring it down and continue to whisk. And man, it's lemon, garlic, rosemary, fennel, pork fat and cream, black pepper.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. So I did something very similar with my porchetta, and I put a little bit of mustard in it, seeded mustard as well. And that also goes well with those particular flavors, especially if you're doing a creamy sauce.
Yeah.
A little bit of mustard.
Little tang.
Yum.
Yeah, you do need a little tang,
delicious.
Don't you? I mean, you got the lemon, but the mustard also gives you that back of the throat tang.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's what I got. Poor man's porchetta.
Sounds delicious. So I've got one that is a continuation of my dim sum recipes because, of course, I'm doing these little plates. And mine is shou mai, which is a Cantonese dim sum staple. In Australia, it's interesting that the Chinese immigrants first came to Australia during the gold rush in the sort of the early 1800s, and they made a version of most of their food from a lot of them are from Cantonese, and so they made a local version of a lot of their meals that they were used to, but using Australian ingredients. And they made this thing, and it became so popular in Australia that it became a staple. So, and it was called the dim sim. Of course, this is just Australians mispronouncing dim sum. But so the sum, and it really is it's like a little sou mai, but it's using cabbage. And that made me think, maybe I could make shou mai, which is normally it's a pork and prawn dumpling that is in a wonton wrapper. And I thought maybe instead of using a wonton wrapper, we've already done, last week I did yuba, which is the bean curd skin, and the week before you did chicken skin.
Yeah.
I thought, what could we use instead of wontons? So I thought maybe cabbage. And so here's what I did was I took half a head of cabbage and I boiled it up for about 2 minutes in salty water. Yeah. And then I used tongs to separate the leaves, and I was able to slightly wilt the leaves enough to be able to depress them into a silicone muffin tin.
Okay.
Or a muffin mold, and I was able to put the shou mai straight into it, and it came out perfectly.
Wow.
Here's the basic recipe for the shou mai. So I'm going to use roughly half a head of cabbage. So I'm going to be making 12 dumplings. And they're not they're probably about 4 times the size of a normal shumai dumpling because we're using a muffin pan. So I've got a half a head of cabbage and about a tablespoon of salt, and that's to get the wilted cabbage. Now, the contents of the shumai normally use cornstarch. We're not going to do that. We're going to play some tricks with how we handle the proteins. We're going to use the proteins to set themselves rather than relying on cornstarch for setting it. And so I'm going to take about 250 grams of pork mince, and don't get the lean pork mince. Just get the cheapest possible pork mince because that's the one with the highest fat content. Yeah. You can look at the nutritional information if you want.
You can also just grind up a pork butt, right? Because that has.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Absolutely. If you feel like, ground pork mince is pretty easy to find in Australia at the supermarket. So 250 grams of ground pork mince, about half a kilo of unpeeled raw prawns, or in America you'd call them shrimp. And you'd probably call these jumbo shrimp, actually. And the reason we have 250 grams of pork mince and 500 grams of prawns is because when you peel prawns, you get roughly 50% of the flesh and roughly 50% of the shells. We're going to use the shells. What we're going to do is we're going to peel all the prawns and we're going to put the shells in a fry pan and we're going to fry them with about 50 grams of macadamia oil. We're going to make prawn head oil. And at the end of this recipe, you're going to end up with this prawn head oil, which is like liquid gold.
Liquid shrimp sauce.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Add it to mayonnaise, for example, to make a dipping sauce for these. Oh, wow. It's so good. Anyway,
all the flavor of the prawn is in the head, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So that's when you make stock from shrimp or crustaceans, it's usually the bodies that make the stock. Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably the brain matter as well. It's pretty nasty in there. But, you fry it and you won't notice any of that.
Yeah, of course.
Put some lovely macadamia oil and then
you strain it off. Exactly.
It's delicious. So we've got the pork mince and we've got the peeled prawns. Now, there's a trick that I'm going to do with the prawns. What I'm going to do is I'm going to soak them for 30 minutes in the fridge, and I'm going to add some baking powder to them. About maybe a tablespoon of baking powder.
All right.
What we're doing is we're alkalizing the prawns, and what we're making the soaking liquid slightly alkaline, and what that will do is it'll force water into the prawns, and so they become more juicy. Yeah. And so it means that the prawns are going to pop when you eat these shumai.
Yeah.
So we've got the prawns in the fridge for 30 minutes and they're getting nice and plump and getting delicious. So we're going to take the pork mince and we're going to add about 15 grams of finely grated root ginger and about 15 grams of finely grated raw garlic.
Oh, yeah.
I use a microplane. This is a little gadget that it's actually a woodworking gadget originally, and
they use it extensively in Asian cooking.
Oh yeah, because it really makes a very fine grate. I'm going to add a teaspoon of sesame oil and a tablespoon of Shaoxing Chinese cooking wine or cooking sherry. You could just use regular sherry as well, and then 2 tablespoons of light soy sauce. And what you want to do is you want to start stirring this with a spoon for about 5 minutes. And what will happen is the proteins will start to relax in that marinade and it'll start to become gelatinous. Stir all in the same direction. Just keep going until it starts to become gelatinous and then put it in the fridge until the prawns are ready. We're going to combine the two together and we're going to add to them about 50 grams of chopped spring onions. And that is going to make the fillings for our shumai.
Now, when you say chopped spring onions, do you mean we call them scallions here in America?
Scallions or shallots.
Green onions.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, shallots are different than scallions.
Yeah, in Queensland and Australia, Queenslanders call what you call scallions and what most of the rest of Australia calls spring onions. Queenslanders call shallots. So if you're in Queensland, it's a shallot, which is different from a shallot.
Oh, a shallot is different from a shallot.
Yeah,
okay. I'm just trying to keep up, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to keep in my head all these different
it's crazy.
names for the same food. So you could use onion as well. I mean,
sure.
Any of the alums.
Nice. That sounds great.
Now, I had to cut my silicone muffin mold in half to fit into my bamboo steamer. I've got a 10-inch bamboo steamer, and you basically put a wok on your stove, you put boiling water in the wok, put your steamer on top of it, and you put the shumai inside the cabbage leaves. Now, I didn't trim them or anything. I waited until I'd cooked the shumai before I trimmed the leaves and trimmed all the outside of them. And then just to finish them off, add a little bit of either salmon roe or caviar.
Nice.
Fish eggs right in the middle of it, just as a little mark to it adds to the flavour, and it sets your dish apart. So that's my shumai.
That's great.
That's another in my continuing foray into Chinese dim sum culture.
It sounds awesome. And, I was thinking as you were saying, when you steam things in water, it brought to mind one of my tips for instant flavor in cooking.
What's that?
Is any time that you're going to use water to boil anything or to steam anything, consider using a stock instead.
Right.
Now, in your case, maybe vegetable stock or some shrimp stock?
Well, I could have put the prawn heads after I strained them to get the prawn head oil out. Could have thrown those prawn heads straight into the water.
Right.
That would have definitely improved the quality of the steam. Definitely.
Right. And it dawned on me after I had my enlightened moment of cooking vegetables under the broiler with olive oil, salt, and pepper, and just how that is the way to prepare vegetables. I'm sorry, anybody who boils a vegetable is committing a sin.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lost opportunity there. Instead of getting mush, you get crisp, fatty flavor. That's awesome. All right. That's a show, my friend.
Yeah, of course, if you have anything that you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something that you don't agree with, some more research that you found to support or refute anything that we've said, send it by email to dudes@2ketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter at 2ketodudes, on Instagram at 2ketodudes, and make sure to use the hashtag 2ketodudes.
And, of course, if you want to join the free ketogenic forum, it's forum.2keto.com.
And if useless swag is your fancy T-shirts, coffee mugs, I'm not going to say it, other junk with witty keto sayings on them, head over to gear.2keto.com.
And if you want a shot at getting some of that swag for free, join the 2 Keto Dudes fan club. You'll be eligible to win something in every show. Go to fanclub.2keto.com.
And if you feel like supporting our forums and all the podcasts we produce, including 2 Keto Dudes, Keto Woman with Daisy Brackenhall, and the Obesity Code podcast with Jason Fung and Megan Ramos, think about making a monthly pledge on our Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com.
Or just hit the donate button on our website at www.2ketodudes.com, or just go to donate.2keto.com.
And you can also see all of our podcasts and other videos on YouTube at youtube.2keto.com. And there you can see videos from last year's Keto Fest. And by the way, stay tuned for Keto Fest. Go to ketofest.com. It's coming up.
And if you haven't already, go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That's how new people get to know about what we do.
2 Keto Dudes is brought to you by 2 Keto LLC, who strives to support the low-carb community with podcasts and other publications. Well, Richard, keep calm and keto on.
Yeah, keep calm and keto on, Carl.
All right. We'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.